No guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction, fiction, fiction.
Sporus salutations to all you cognonauts out there, and welcome to another episode of Exofathom. I am Nick, and I am joined, as always, by my two lovely co-hosts. Mike, how are you?
Oh, you know me, man. Hang it in there. How are
Hanging
you
in
doing?
there.
I like
All
those
right.
glasses.
Hey, thanks. I'm seeing the world in a new lens, so I
Oh,
figured
man.
the
Jealous.
glasses
Do I
will
have
probably
glasses?
help. Yeah, and we have Ayla here. How are you, Ayla?
Hello, hello. Happy Friday. I am doing fine. I'm enjoying a cup of tea. I encourage listeners, if you are hanging out today, to make yourself a cup of tea and relax, enjoy the show. I know I will.
Sounds about right. I hope I do too. Tonight we're going to be talking about fungi, the fungus among us, as this episode is titled. And the overall idea is that I wanted to share some interesting facts about fungi. I think that they're quite interesting organisms. But I also want to maybe paint a picture for you guys as well. And we'll get deeper into that as the show progresses. But I guess I would ask you guys from the jump. I want to know, do you know any facts? How about this? Do you know any facts about fungi?
I will just point out and remind everybody that I made a little episode called Plant Power. Was that what I called it? That is what I called it. And so, yeah, in that one, I definitely got into I think it's called the mycelium sheath. Is that it? Mycelium floor. The concept
Mycelium
that
network.
That's what it is. Mycelium sheath is like the name of like the a brain covering, I think. But anyway, maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, yeah, I do remember it was kind of groovy that you would have these mushrooms that have this whole network that helps trees communicate where resources were needed. And so you could have one tree that might be a tall tree, often referred to as a mother tree, soaking up more sunlight than the little bottom trees. And through the network of the mushrooms, the bottom trees would absorb some of the nutrients through that main tree. And then I know about the creepy zombie ants, and I think that that kind of covers it.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much all of my episodes. So thanks, Ayla. You've ruined it, and I think we could just call it from there.
What?
This is what I get for not having show notes. No.
I have
I'm
nothing
so
to add to
sorry,
this
no.
conversation. Good job, Ayla. Thanks.
Yeah.
Wow.
You took all the good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you guys had that nice cup of tea ready, because good
Just
sipping.
sip some tea and talk about mushrooms or
having
fungi. Yeah.
I'm having
No, I know
fungi
Nick-
tea in a little tiny glass.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
Mike, what about you? You know any facts about fungi?
Want to ruin his show
Ayla-
further?
Ayla said all of the facts that I know about fungi. So
Yeah.
no, I don't know anything.
Oh, I mean, those are pretty important things to know, and we will get into mycorrhizal connection, which is what Ayla was referring to just then when she talked about the mycelium network, which is quite fascinating.
It does all sound very parasitic.
It does, and interestingly enough, so from what I was reading, and I've read quite a bit, there is a lot of parasitism in fungi. There's also a lot of reciprocity. So there is sympathetic, or I guess symbiotic relationships that they can form, but they can also choose to form parasitic relationships. And there's the distinction with the word choice, because yes, they can make a choice.
Interesting.
And
I do
so-
know one thing.
yeah.
Though. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
They don't go on pizza. Fungi?
Yeah,
Whatever.
I'm
you
not a
pronounce
big
it,
fan of
GIF.
that. Yeah.
GIF. None of that goes on pizzas.
Yes. Well, I think to start this off, we should probably come to a conclusion about how we're going to pronounce this, because there's there's fungi, there's fungi. How do you guys want to pronounce this?
I think we should all choose a different version and
We'll
stick
probably end
through
up
it
just
through the
using
whole
them all
episode.
anyways. Yeah.
No. We're gonna stick through it because you know how like when you listen to somebody talk, sometimes you'll kind of emulate them. So this will be a fun little exercise where the game is that you got to say it the way you say you want to say it. So I'm gonna go with fungi.
Okay. That's cool.
I'm gonna go with whatever Nick doesn't choose.
I think it's fungi. Or wait, what did I say? I don't even
I have a
remember.
feeling you're going to be in agreement with Ayla. There's going to be some collusion here between you two.
No.
I just want to be a contrarian.
Yeah, it's either fungi or fungi. I don't
Or
care.
fungi.
Or fungi.
You added fungi. That's kind of interesting.
Or fungi. Yeah.
See, look at that. Okay, so I've got.
If you want to be Italian about it, you say fungi.
But you have to go like this.
Fungi. Yeah.
But see, the game's hard. I'm like, wait, which did I choose? Fungi.
Right.
Bland root.
No matter what you call it, we're really talking about a species of not plant and not animal. It's very difficult to categorize them, so much so that they've made their own category. Fungi are a part of their own branch. In fact, scientists believe that they created their own branch to not be to take the benefits of plant things and the benefits of animal things. So the two ideas are fungi decided to take the ability to replicate from plants, but also the ability to eat sort of carnivorously from animals. And so they do both of these things. And in fact, I guess scientists are sort of more leaning that they're closer to animals than they are to plants. And they have these, I mean, it gets so weird. It gets so weird.
Well, and it's giving me like total jellyfish vibes, right? Because like jellyfish, they have does their DNA has like no other match on Earth? Like they have weird outlier characteristics.
That's octopi, I believe.
Octopi. Okay. What did I say?
Jellyfish.
Oh, weird. Yeah. Okay. Different things. But yeah. So octopi. And then you think about like marsupials, just the outlier organisms of the earth, and you start to wonder, like, when you deep dive it, it gets really interesting.
And it's funny.
Parasites.
Just calling them parasites. Well, it's funny that Ayla, you say this sort of outlier, because my reading also sort of brought me to this question too: is are we sure we aren't just the supporting players in some other organism's story? And reading into fungi made me really feel that way. If you want the brief history of how fungi came to be, the origin isn't exactly 100% nailed down because it was so long ago. The oldest fossil records of fungi that we have are from about 1 billion years ago. There's speculative ones that are also perhaps 2 billion years old. Which would put them at about 500 million to 1 billion years earlier than plant life. They've been on the earth for a very, very long time, and they started off in the ocean, and so they actually had phalangula when they were in the ocean to swim. And so these little spores, or these little single-celled and sometimes multi-celled organisms, were swimming around the ocean, and about 1 billion years ago, they moved onto terrestrial areas, onto the rock. And back then, no plant life, probably not much animal life on the land as we know it, probably very little at all, aside from maybe bacteria. And they terraformed Earth. They made a relationship with cyanobacteria and algae to create what's called lichen. If you guys know what lichen is, you've probably seen it on hikes before.
Underworld. Oh.
Yeah, I was going to say werewolves.
Not, I think maybe it's called lichen, but it's Lichen. So it could be lichen or lichen or lichen, another
I like
difficult
lichen.
word.
Nice.
Yeah.
No, lichen is. Oh my God.
Yeah. So the idea is that when fungi needed to move on to land, it needed to make a couple of alliances. And really, there weren't many alliances to be had back then. You had the bacteria and you had the algae, which were sort of the precursors to plant life. Fungi decided to make a pact with all three of them in the form of lichen, which is this. It kind of looks like Spanish moss a little bit, but it usually grows on rock or the sides of trees sometimes, and it has like a whitish, greenish look to it. And it would almost look like moss, but moss that was ripped up, and it just had like the establishing roots of moss. You probably have seen it on your hikes before if you've been hiking anywhere in the world, because it's literally anywhere. And what the cool thing about lichen is that it eats rock. And so, about 1 billion years ago, this lichen is sort of created, and it starts to munch away at all the rock on Earth. And before that fact, there was no soil in the Earth. So lichen is single-handedly responsible for creating all the soil in the Earth.
Is soil the
soil.
poop from the rock?
So what it is that they have. Okay, thank you for reining me in here a little bit. So fungi are they have these. They're kind of like fingers almost, but they're called hyphae, and they're these tubes that have little like fingers on the end of them, and that's what they use to explore their territory. And these hyphae actually have like a puncture capacity. They're able to bite at about 1200 psi, which is quite good. But what they would do is they puncture into the rock and they break down the minerals through the hyphae, and then being fungi, they absorb the carbon. And so that's usually what they eat. So they basically ate rock for 500 million years until there was enough soil for plants to grow.
And then they pooped out soil. That's the waste product.
Yeah, the waste product was just the sort of the deconstruction of the rock back down into things like nitrogen and other elements.
Oh, that makes playing in mud and dirt a completely different thing.
yeah, exactly, right. Well, they did. There was a really interesting fact that I read. They said something like a tablespoon of soil has as many as, I want to say like 1 million fungal spores in it. Maybe even more. It could have been something crazy like 100 million or something like that. But
Still gross.
It's still gross. But that's to say that it is ubiquitous. Like fungi is everywhere. It's in our soil. There's I think there was let me see. I'm gonna get my little factoids here.
It's in you.
Well, it's certainly in you. We can get to that too. Right. So fungal spores are responsible for about 50 million tons of particulate in the air. Basically, these things are, I don't want to say it, but they are, but they're literally like nature's penis. Because then you start to see the symbolism between mushrooms and the phallus and all of that stuff.
Wait. Before you start repping that,
Yes.
no, I'm just kidding.
Oh no, but
I'm
So many political jokes I can make right now.
The joke potential is huge here.
Mhm.
Dangerous ground.
Huge. Like,
Huge.
huge.
Yeah.
You know what's funny though? Speaking of huge, going back to the fungi eating rocks thing,
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about like our mythology and like how a lot of cultures talk about these like big monsters before, man was here, humans. And I don't know, when you were talking, I got this image of like these mushrooms or these fungi like just eating, and then like you get these ginormous ones and like their finger spores are just like rocks, but they would appear to be like big monsters. Now that's totally crazy. I'm just
Well, yeah, if you zoomed
playing
in, maybe
around.
they could look like some sort of Lovecraftian monster. Yeah.
Right, like a Godzilla mushroom hybrid or something like that.
Yeah.
Must be a lot of Halo. That's what the flood is.
The flood.
This
Yeah.
fungi.
Yeah. Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
Or like the Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters, but like a cute little spore.
Well, you do know, like, humans are like a collection of cells.
Yes,
Mhm.
I do.
We're not one thing. We're like a
Oh no.
bajillion things.
Yes, definitely we
As
are.
I'm sure we're gonna find out more creepy facts. Ugh.
Yeah. So I guess I should make a distinction as to what make fungi sort of biologically special, and that would be what's called chitin that they have around their nucleus walls, which is an exoskeleton. Kind of similar when you see a beetle walking around on, or any insectoid, they have kind of a hard outside shell. That is what lines the walls of the nucleus for each fungal cell, which sets them apart from any other. That's why they're kind of in between plant and animal, because they have a cell that's very similar to a plant cell, but it's lined with an exoskeleton like an animal.
Wow, so it doesn't absorb information, etc., from its surroundings like a regular cell?
No, it does. It actually literally absorbs everything, which is funny because the cell walls are an exoskeleton, but they're also, the fungi chooses what it wants to absorb. So it is a defensive mechanism, but it can also absorb basically anything it wants to.
That is super interesting.
Yeah, and that's how they eat. That's how fungus eats, is that they absorb things. They're not actually eating it. They're not actually chewing it up and digesting it. They're just literally absorbing it cell to cell, and taking it over.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a very kind of interesting way of living.
I like the selective absorption thing.
Yes,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, it shows a level of intelligence too, which is kind of something that hasn't really been fully studied yet, but I wouldn't doubt that it'll be studied eventually. Is that we might be seeing an intelligent life form? We certainly do with what Ayla was talking about, which is called the mycorrhizal connection, or mycorrhizal connection. Which is when these hyphae, like I talked about, these little fingers, when they go out and explore,
The penises.
the little penises. These little penises have a great.
I'm a child.
Yeah, they have a great knack. They can actually produce asexually, so they just replicate each other. So these little hyphae will move around their environment, replicate, branch off, move around, and it's kind of like this creep effect. And as they replicate, they can become entangled with each other, which creates this mycelium, which would be the network of hyphae that sort of give feedback to the fruiting body or whatever plant they might be attached to, or connected to all the plants they're attached to. And that's sort of how the mycelium network is created.
That is interesting.
So you said these fungi, the spores are like constantly in the air, all over the earth, right? And that means we breathe them in, and they're inside of us, and all that stuff.
Yes, sir.
You think this could be like the physical mechanism for people understanding each other in very strange ways, or like we've talked about before, like that? Like pretty much reading minds, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And
I would after reading this and going through all of this, I would venture to say that it is a unsettling possibility that all of the spiritual things that we experience are a ancestral memory of the fungi that we come from.
That'd be pretty cool.
It's very cool, but it's a very unsettling thought.
I feel like this episode needs sound effects. Like that monkey that's just hammering the piano.
Yeah.
It's just nature. What's unsettling about it?
It's unsettling. Okay, so it is nature, yes, absolutely. But then I guess it comes back to this idea that we as humans are just the supporting actors in somebody else's story. And I think that is kind of maybe not like it's unsettling existentially, I think. as a
Yeah.
human-centric person, you know, like
Right, right.
having to come to grips with this idea that fungi might be the heroes of all of this, and that we might just exist solely as a consequence of the fungi or even as a host for the fungi is quite frightening.
Well,
Oh,
it
the
was
fun guy.
super fungi. It was super unsettling to say that the Earth wasn't the center of the universe.
Yeah.
Mhm.
God and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I think once we understand that, like getting back to that collective idea that human beings are a collective of a bunch of different cells working, and like the ego is the only thing that says like I am one thing. I'm a human. This has a name. But I think if we get used to the idea that we're collectives, then it kind of makes sense. Like it's not that scary where it's like, oh, we're just collectives of fungi, or these collectives are being driven by fungi.
Right.
We can
Well,
use them to transmit
Man.
information much faster than expected.
Yes, you're absolutely right about that. But there is a distinction that might explain why the ego exists.
Oh, nice.
When the hyphae connect with each other, they keep their cellular autonomy.
Okay.
So they actually connect with each other and feed information, but each of the actually keeps its own cellular integrity. So it sees itself still as an individual, but connected.
Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to blame the little penises. Come
No, no.
on.
Bringing
Yeah,
it
yeah.
back. But no,
It's got a
yeah,
callback.
right. Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting kind of like thought experiment or thought back alley to sort of lose yourself in, because you know, when I was doing the plant power episode, I think one of the things that came to mind as I was reading about the networks underground is sort of the concept of like walking barefoot. You know, there's a lot of people who talk about you know, from like a forest bathing perspective, the benefits of walking barefoot on dirt or in a forest, and just
People
like
used to eat dirt.
people used to eat dirt. Yeah, if you have certain deficiencies, you'll just naturally want to eat dirt. And so I just wondered to myself, like, if the dirt itself is like, yeah, I mean, you just think about all the connections, and we started out without shoes, and then we decided to put shoes on, and so I don't know if that disrupted any sort of like equilibrium, and then we branched off and
Right. Well,
angered our mushroom overlords or something like that.
well, take it even deeper. Fungi invented altruism and self-sacrifice. So when we talk about this mycelium network, Ayla and Mike, you mentioned the sort of parasitism that is very, you know, familiar with the fungal concept and, you know,
Parasitism?
parasiteness.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But you had mentioned that, but in actuality, the first act of altruism might have been mycelium networks giving their lives for the plants that they were sending information to and from, because they found out that mycelium networks will sacrifice themselves in order to save the plant that is maybe dying.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is if you take it like this would break survival mechanisms, right? That the thing is self-interested in keeping itself alive, unless it does operate kind of like this hive mind where just because one part of the network dies, or even if the whole localized network dies, that there's still not some other network on the other side of things.
Right.
Would say that gets to live and the two know about each other. This is like my idea with like the one, like the Jet Li idea, where like every time you come like through like near death experiences in some other parallel world, you died, but your like little soul just transferred universes real quick and you continue living. But kind of like that thing where one part of the network dies, but the other part still keeps going.
Yeah, or it resurrects. Or it can literally reform itself after being destroyed, because all the little hyphaes, there'll still be some that come around and they'll create a new mycelium network. And so you get this concept of resurrection. Fungi Jesus, dude.
Wow.
Fungi Jesus.
I want a shirt that says that.
Yeah.
Fungi Jesus,
Yeah.
my homie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But if
that
you
needs
think,
to happen.
I mean, if you think
Hilarious.
about the concept of self-sacrifice, that would be one of the earliest exhibits of self-sacrifice, which would be a mycelium network giving its life for a plant.
That's cool. And like I said, since that breaks the basic mechanism of survival, it does also give credence to the notion of intelligence.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least outside of some sort of mechanistic system, like
Yeah.
it doesn't. They do recognize that it seems to make choices because it can allocate information through the mycelium net as it chooses. And it can communicate information across plants and stuff.
Oh, I may even be able to make an argument towards morality, fungi morality, where so like any of our virtues, anything that we find moral is something that raises above biological imperatives.
Mm-hmm.
You don't kill people, but like in moments of self-defense, monkeys kill other monkeys all the time, right?
Yeah.
And all that survival stuff. So that intelligence might actually be far enough to have some weird semblance of morality and
Mm-hmm.
virtues.
Yeah. Agreed. An ethic.
Mhm.
There might be an ethic deep in the fungi, which would have been happening, 400 million years ago.
And just
Yeah.
to interject real quick before, I
Sure,
don't know if you
please
were going to
do.
move on.
No, go ahead. Go
Okay.
ahead.
There's like so much stuff to like think about on this topic because nature is just fascinating. And I think that like as our tools and our, ability to compile and aggregate data and stuff gets more sophisticated, you start to really appreciate some of these little things. And on the morality concept, it makes me wonder about the concepts of competition versus cooperation, right?
Mhm.
Because it would be self-sacrifice if these mushrooms, I mean, I guess they do have their own identities, but maybe they're tapping into something such that it's not necessarily a sacrifice. It's more of just like, oh, well, we're all kind of this interconnected kind of.
I think it's a wider awareness of what they're connected to. So they have an
Right.
understanding of themselves and also the wider connectivity of the network that they're in. So they can
Yeah.
feel like their sacrifice is for the greater good, basically.
Yeah.
You have to worry a little bit about anthropomorphizing these fungi, though.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely.
It may
Yeah.
just be part of their nature to self-sacrifice. Like getting
Maybe.
back to a very like mechanistic point of view, it could just be there. Like, has there been evidence of fungi ever letting the plants die?
Well, there's
Like,
been evidence of
like-
symbiotic fungi turning parasitic and then back again. They
Learned
seem
its
to be
lesson,
able to.
changed its ways.
Well, they seem to be able to decide whether they want to become parasitic to the plant that they're next to or not.
Okay, so then that eliminates more of like the mechanistic argument.
Right.
Because then you would see some sense of determinism. No, so yeah, it is interesting. They may have some notion of a greater good and then choosing whether to do it or choosing to be selfish.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Yeah. Maybe the plant isn't worth it, or then they'll know something bigger will grow in its place or something like that. But
I
go
also-
ahead.
I was going to say, I also just like the way that they communicate with one another because, like we have language, and before that, I have to assume we worked off of like maybe hand signals. Maybe before that, nothing.
Body
I don't know.
language.
You body language, right? And before that, like when you look at the animal kingdom, you look at the way that bees communicate, the way that ants communicate. A lot of these animals, especially the animals that exist in like big groups, they do have the ability to rapidly, as a group, change course and change directions and make decisions. And there's no obvious body language or guttural sounds coming out of them. In some cases, like with elephants, it's there, the sound, but we can't hear it because of the frequency. But with these mushrooms, the way that they're communicating, it just makes you wonder, like language is a wonderful thing, but I always wonder to myself, like what humans would be like if we didn't have that. And
Well,
we
they
communicated a
communicate
different way.
through chemical and electrical impulses.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, just
So
like
it's a,
humans.
so just like a brain, basically.
I like if we didn't
Maybe.
have spoken language, we do the bee thing. You just start dancing. Maybe just be dancing.
Yeah,
with
there
each
you go.
other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I gotta
Definitely.
go do the thing. He
Yeah.
did this thing. It's not quite
Right.
this thing, but it was this thing.
And I think to get a little bit closer to this sort of spirituality bent too. One of the things that sort of struck me as well is that I should have mentioned before, but there are about 148,000 different known species of fungi, but there are speculated to be about 2 million species of fungi, which would put it above plant life and insect life, I believe. Insect life is about 1 million, and they think there's probably about 2 million different species of fungi, all originating from one bud.
Well, Nick, hate to break your heart, but every
Hmm.
human is unique. It's their own species. So there's 8 billion humans, so we beat the fungi.
There you
We
go.
beat the
That's fine.
fungi.
Yes. Yes.
No. Oh man. And when you think about like biodiversity and you look at the breakdown versus human, animal, mammal, amphibian, insect, all that stuff, like that's really interesting when you aggregate that. But you're saying that when it comes to the biodiversity of the planet, that the mushrooms, in terms of like the diversity potential of that species of like the different types that there could be, would be the highest of the planet.
Yeah, I mean, bugs might be in competition if they find more, but they know there's about 900 million types of species of bugs. Again,
Whoa.
they are speculating that there's, or not 900 million, 900,000. Sorry, 900,000 species of bugs, and they speculate about 2 million species of fungi. Again, all coming from the same one hyphae, the same one thing created all of those species. So that calls back to this unity, this sort of feeling of oneness, this idea that we're all connected, we all come from the same thing, we're all going to go back to the same thing. Really sort of, mirrors that concept that though we are, one of a different species, or we're, one of a billion, 7 billion people, we all come from the same sort of creator. And
Do you think
same thing for fungi.
Yeah, do you think that little bud might have been on like an asteroid? That there could be some planet somewhere with like
Dun, dun, dun,
5
dun.
billion.
And this is
just a
where
little
and this is
ambassador
where the
bud.
conversation was supposed to go. Yes, absolutely, because that is my hypothesis that the only reason that we as a species even think about going to space is because it comes from mushrooms. And that if you guys are familiar, probably are familiar with the concept of panspermia. It was invented in sort of the Greek era. And
Virgin years.
sorry. Yes, it was invented in the Greek. I think it was like 5 BC, 5 something like that. I forget. But it's this concept that all life probably came from an asteroid hitting the Earth. Now, scientists definitely poo-poo this idea now because it's such an old idea, and they think, maybe they have a better understanding. But there is and was a consensus that it's possible that proto-life came to Earth on the back of some type of flying or cosmic object. And my thought is, I wonder if this isn't fungi's first rodeo. If, it's been doing this for billions of years, populating planets with its kind enough to get back into the atmosphere and hitch a ride with another celestial object.
Oh, is there dirt on other planets?
Dirt?
No, it makes the dirt.
It makes the
Yeah.
dirt. Yeah.
Right.
It's
So like
the natural terraforming. So it doesn't matter exactly what's on the planet. It's like a biological. You know how Elon wants to. I hate that I just called him Elon. You know how Elon Musk wants to nuke a planet.
You're right.
The asteroid with the
He
fungi
does?
would be the natural nuke. Yeah, he wants to nuke Mars a bunch of times to terraform.
Oh my gosh. What? He wants to nuke Mars?
To create an atmosphere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's wild. Well, and like
If he just
I
has
don't
some
know.
sick beaks to play all over Mars, you could create an atmosphere there. Just needs the sick beaks.
I like it. Yes, get the ambiance going.
Yeah,
yeah.
being stupid.
Yeah, but so like that's kind of the trippy idea is that we know that the earliest records of fungi are about 2 billion years old.
So I have a weird, because this kind of fits with the as below so above sort of thing too, right? That we hold a lot of cultures hold near and dear. So because they eat rocks, which planets are made out of rocks. So what if that asteroid hitting Earth wasn't an asteroid? Well, it's an asteroid, but it was the last remaining parts of their planet.
Maybe
that was just left. So that's why we're so obsessed with not destroying our planet. So we've kind of done this all before, but it's part of more of our fungi nature to destroy the thing that we're on because it's we have to eat somehow, right?
Right. Yeah, I like that. I like that idea. And to kind of piggyback on that concept, I should mention also is that fungi really love one thing, and it's mass extinction events.
Parties.
It is their. It is by far their favorite thing in the world, and so much so, in fact, that the last mass extinction event, most of us know, about 65 million years ago, that killed the dinosaurs. The only reason that mammals carried on was because there was a gigantic fungi bloom, because all of that dead material's got to get eaten by something. Wow. And what the fungi did was eat all the dinosaurs and then create oxygen to bring the oxygen levels up.
That's a thing. That's
on the
real?
Earth. What? Yeah. And they've actually been able to. They've been able to track it to 2 major catastrophes. So one pre the 65 million years ago, I think it was like 200 million years ago or something like that. And then another one that killed the dinosaurs. Every time that happens, there's a gigantic fungi bloom because the fungi just eat everything. Eat everything.
Increase in oxygen. Have you seen the bugs? Like during those weird moments when like mammals were still getting bigger. Like bugs, like spiders, like the size of trucks, I think, or something ridiculous like that. Like,
right.
Like flying. Oh my! It was not a time. Like that's my one weird fear. Like playing World of Warcraft. There's a section where you have to always go into like these hives and kill all these bugs, and the bugs are giant. For some reason, it always creeped me out. So the notion of a wasp, the size of a manlet like me, is terrifying.
Dude, they were gigantic bugs. Yeah.
No, it's
like Starship Troopers.
Yeah, when the oxygen goes up and the environment allows it, all those animals get way bigger.
Yeah, big time. And yeah, so they love a good mass extinction event that helps them re-terraform the planet. And basically, they're just the Earth's trash compactors. They eat everything. They just eat everything. They're very good at it. Yeah.
And question, I don't know if you came across this in your studies, but I remember a documentary years and years ago, and it was about these like moors in Ireland, I think, or somewhere in that area. And it wasn't, it was like we're looking at it, and I think that they were a type of fungus. But what was really cool about them is that their output of oxygen was like one little one was like the equivalent of like a blue whale or something. Like it was intense oxygen generation. For me, I remember watching it like, why don't we just get more of those things? Like,
I mean, they're kind of like nature's Dyson filters. To be honest, like they're very, very good, especially lichen. Lichen is very good about absorbing pollutants. So they've found that lichen, it'll take all the heavy metals, it'll take all of the carbon dioxide out of the area because they're very, very absorbent and sensitive. So they have a heavy effect on the atmosphere, the temperatures, even and so humans. Much. Well,
Penicillin eats all the
I'm gonna
Oh.
get to the human aspect. Trust
Oh,
me.
okay.
We're still on the prehistory sort of aspect, but
Okay.
but they're also known to be able to make it rain. So in the Amazon, there's such a large number of fungi in the Amazon, and they all decide to spore at the same time in order to trigger precipitation. So they seem to know that when maybe like a storm is sort of pregnant and not really falling, because that's when they release all of their spores at once. And because they're like little hole punches that have exoskeletons on them, they pierce the clouds and it creates rain for the forest.
Is that why before it starts to rain, your allergies might act up a little bit? Or is that
Lots of
only in the
spores.
Amazon? Because
Oh,
I
no,
swear
no.
here in California,
It's a lot of dust and a lot of spores, but yes, fungal spores too, for sure.
yeah. And I always knew that like after it rains, my allergies might kick up, but sometimes it'll happen before, and I'm just thinking to myself like, oh no, is that the spores? Is that what that was?
Spores, yeah, they're going into your brain.
Precipitating. Oh gosh, no.
Over a long enough time, bringing just like kind of over a long enough time, like we've talked about how there's like this diversification, like over 2 million different species of fungi, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we kind of talked about the ego a little bit and altruism, because the way you're talking about the way it releases oxygen, it doesn't sound like it gets anything back from the oxygen. And then, like, if it does, then it gets something back that other life gets to grow and die, and then it can feed off of it. I feel like there might be this competing set of fungi where one kind of drives this more altruistic tendencies, or one drives the more parasitic type of tendencies.
Mm-hmm.
Like put out the distribution choice, the distribution of the set of choices that each species of fungi can make, or subset species of fungi can make. And I wonder if these are drivers of actual biological organisms, then the ego is something like the one that's more selfish and has found some way to gain control.
Yeah, you get sort of very loose descriptions of concepts of ethical good and evil, right?
Yeah.
So what you're talking about is mycotoxin, and mycotoxins. Obviously, we know a lot of fungi are poisonous, and the category that they would either sort of be poisonous now. I mean, and it's probably a different category than what you're talking about, which is more the parasitic end of it, which they have the ability to kind of turn on off. But these more harmful fruit bodies would be the ones that produce things like mycotoxin, which is basically just.
Are you calling me toxic?
Mycotoxins. Or you could say mycotoxin, sure.
I'd rock that as a new gaming handle.
Mr. T, MT.
Probably most familiarly, we know that it's a very good rule of thumb not to eat any wild mushrooms that you see, because they tend to contain very powerful poisons, and those are for a reason, because they don't want their fruit bodies being eaten. And the longer the fruit body is able to remain on the surface, the more spores that it can send out into the atmosphere. So obviously the mycotoxins serve a good purpose, but they can also serve a sort of psychedelic purpose, where you get the ideas of psilocybin too, which would be considered a mycotoxin.
Oh yeah,
or a mycotoxin containing fungi.
But it's interesting that it seems like even with the spores that get released for the rain, the allergies, there tends to still be a distribution of like they can choose to release their spores, but they can't choose to figure out what their spores are made of. That makes sense?
Right. Yeah. Yes, it does follow because the spores tend to be very small organisms. I don't know if they can be considered unicellular. They're not, but like you got to think of like the spores are like a little ball with the little hyphae at the end of it. So like just very, very minute things. And it's just kind of like a cloning. You're kind of just cloning yourself. It's like if you were able to just like sneeze mics out into the air.
I mean, that's one way of describing it.
Just sneezing microtoxins.
Yeah, just everywhere. Sound the world.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great tool for propagation.
Of course,
definitely.
Yeah,
but it's not. I wonder, like it, just like me sneezing out all the little mics into the air. It doesn't get to choose its makeup, right?
Right.
But it can choose what it like just like we can choose what to eat and what not to eat, but we can't choose what to release as far as species propagation.
Yeah, and I think that what you're getting to is that they are still very much a subject to their environments, and so the specializations that they pick up are very specific to their environments. So you might, have a spore land, and over time, if it's from a certain genus, it's probably going to be that genus. But over time, if it landed in a foreign more area, it could adapt to an environment that would help it propagate more. That's where you get all these sort of specializations with toxins or symbiotic relationships or parasitic relationships. It's just all specializations for their environment.
Got it. And are there any like fungi war? Because then that makes allergies a lot more. It makes a lot of sense if there's this whole release of fungi that are in competition with the other fungi and they try to kill each other.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if there is actually anything, any science about conflicting fungal spores, but that would be really fascinating. I should have looked into that. Because it doesn't seem like it could be out of the ordinary, to be honest.
And you would have your little, you would have your sword fights.
Yeah. They have their little digits, anyways. They can just fight them with that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm done.
No, it's good. It's good. But to bring it to more modern times and our interactions with humans. Obviously, fungi have been very important for humankind as well. And I think, let me just check real quick, because I had the number and I totally forgot the number. Let's see. Okay, I'm not going to find it. But the earliest use for fungi was a Paleolithic Iceman from, I think they said something like 4,800 years ago. They found in ice, and he had two mushrooms, and they think that those particular mushrooms, because it was in Siberia, were used as tinder, and they said that mushrooms would have been a very good sort of Neolithic tool to create fire, because they have such fleshy bodies that can kind of be pulled apart and have their own fibers and stuff. So they make really great tinder when they're dry. Another sort of analog to the spiritualism of Prometheus, right? You have this fruit that can yield fire for you.
Yeah, and that goes into also the hallucinogenic side, right? Like was it the stoned monkey theory?
Yes, the stoned ape theory. Yeah.
And I mean, from my understanding of psychedelics, you, as far as like the visual hallucinations go, your eyes just get wider and start to accept a lot more light than usual. So you're not making up images per se. You're just overloading a sensor. And reality may actually be the things that you see when you trip, depending on how much you take. So it's sort of like that plays again to like the spirituality thing. But even using it as a tool, I imagine the burning of it releases a certain amount of spores, right?
Yeah.
which aided in evolution still, even if like the altruism of fungi, maybe it attracted the human to eat it, but instead of eating it because it was really cold, the human burned it or found a way to burn it through.
And then and then unwittingly we become sort of propagators of the spores, right? Because this Paleolithic man was found in their pockets traveling. You could take a culture of fungi from one area of the land and transport it somewhere where its spores probably couldn't even reach, thus propagating it out and further out into its sphere of influence.
Yeah, migrating it. It could even be too that if there's any sort of spores driving the human, that it picked up on some sort of subconscious level or mental level, like spores are, hey brother, pick me up and take me over there.
Yeah, right. Maybe God spoke to it and said,
Yeah.
I need you to go take me over here.
Yeah.
Big Mike, what's going on, man? Thanks for tuning in. You are a fun guy.
Yes.
So as far as the relationship to humans, we know that we've had probably a lot of trial and error figuring out what types of fungi are good for us and what types are bad for us and can kill us. There was probably some trial and error there, although we probably did watch other animals to see which ones they were eating. And, that's usually a decent enough gauge.
Is that where we get the scientific animal? Oh, sorry to keep interrupting.
No, that's all right.
The scientific animal experiments. Is that why scientists love to test it on those rats? Test it on those dogs.
Yeah.
Goes back to some guy like, I don't want to eat this. Like, this killed that wolf over there. I'm not eating these things. I'll get those other wolves. Plant it over here and see if these ones kill those wolves.
Maybe fungus are just very curious about all of that stuff. Though, where was I here? I am gonna be talking about. So we're talking about the relationship with humans. One of the biggest domesticators of humans was a fungus. Did you guys know that?
Domesticator.
One of the biggest domesticators of humans, which is yeast. Yeast helped society domesticate itself with the ability to bread, to create wine and ale, many other uses in pre-civilization era humans. Yeast was the first organism that humans sort of domesticated. And in turn, it sort of domesticated us because it gave us much more comfort. It gave us things that were able to sustain us through winters, like bread and meat and ale. These types of things were very filling for long, cold winters. And the use of yeast has been dates around, they think, about 5,000 years. The oldest thing they found was like an Egyptian vase they found in a tomb that contained a yeast culture that was still alive. What's that?
Yeast and beer.
Yeast and beer.
I'm pretty sure beer has yeast, right? Am I going crazy here?
Beer and wine. Yeah. Beer and wine have to use yeast to help it's just basically a sugar eater. That's all it is.
There is a difference though between unleavened bread and leavened bread, and the difference is yeast.
Yes.
So unleavened bread is bread that you would find in your Bible and in most religious texts, which, interestingly enough, one can argue is more barbaric times than times of leavened bread, which kind of plays into the whole domestication of humans, like you were saying.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And perhaps it might be an affront to fungi Jesus to eat leavened bread. Because
it's the wrong kind of next time's the enemy's fungi.
Complicates things.
Yeah. Maybe fungi doesn't like when you eat it. So, the idea of keeping your bread free was a good idea.
I can see that. It's interesting.
Yeah, yeast is very important to our development. Obviously, I don't need to tell you guys about it, but it did help tremendously, and it still plays a major role in our society. It's a single-celled organism, so it's actually a single-celled fungi, which just kind of coalesces into like a slime. Then you have things like slime molds, which are not considered fungi anymore, but they used to be. Slime molds are pretty gross.
Have you ever had naan? Going back to the whole bread thing. I like
I
bread.
love naan. Yeah.
Yeah, I've baked plenty of unleavened and leavened bread.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, there is a weird comfort that comes from eating leavened bread, but there's like a weird, like the unleavened bread just, it's a little bit harder to, like, it doesn't last as long. At least when I make it, doesn't last as long. I make your own.
Mhm.
But there is a trade-off. It feels like you get short-term pleasure from the yeast, but you kind of get like long-term enjoyment from it having it be unleavened.
Mhm.
Like, the only modern bread that is still made unleavened is like naan. Like,
Yeah.
popular.
Yeah, I prefer unleavened bread, to be honest. I get kind of I feel a little bit crappy when I have too much bread, especially if it has yeast in it. But to each its own. Everybody has a Speaking of the sort of the fungi that might be within us, we all have we all talk about the bacteria that lives inside of us, and how important that is, and it really is. But we also have about 9 different species of fungi living in us. At any given time. So they're very much interacting in our gut biome as well. The cravings for sugar might be an overpopulation of certain fungi in the stomach as well, because they do like to metabolize glucose. So these types of cravings you might be getting might just be the fungi and bacteria in your stomach telling you what they want you to eat instead of what you actually want to eat. So it's kind of fun.
That makes sense. There's a lot of that too with deficiencies.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get certain weird cravings if you're deficient on certain vitamins or things like that, which might be the fungi.
Could be.
Can do.
Right. Hey, I need more nitrogen down here.
Seymour, feed me.
Yeah. Exactly.
So we're just like walking houseplants, kind of.
Kind of a little bit. I mean, we definitely have a very close connection to fungi. And I mentioned the yeast thing, but then of course for shamanic practices, psilocybe cubensis and also Amanita muscaria have been used for thousands of years in ritualistic sort of practices in spiritualism. You have famously I think it's called the School of Eleusis. I think is that what it was? I believe it's the School of Eleusis in ancient Greece, where they speculate that they were all dosing themselves with a sort of psilocybin tea, and then having giant symposiums about philosophy and the meaning of life. But yeah, we've had a very intimate relationship with fungi in the spiritual aspect. And I wasn't able to get too much concrete data about this, but I wanted to look into other plant sort of psychedelics and see whether, fungi had any, connection to them, but I wasn't able to find for sure. What I was able to find is that the precursor to LSD, of course, is called ergotamine, which is a mold that grows on rye. Of course, we have the Salem witch trials, which highly speculated that ergotamine got into the rye supply, and that's why everybody was freaking out, because they were all hallucinating on proto-LSD.
Not good.
Yeah.
I like the contrast in answers. You're like,
Yeah.
"That's not
Well, I'm
good."
just thinking about all the murder that happened after.
Right.
Well, like, that's what happens when you're like not aware that you're on a drug.
Right. Of course. Yes.
The fear sets in. Sometimes the fear can set in even when you know. But I'm trying to think of. So, like, I've had various experiences with psilocybin, never animal scare. I have found a few of them, but Never took them. I just left them alone.
Mhm.
But in my experiences with them, you do get highly introspective. There, maybe like once I had a very like visual trip,
Mhm.
but I have a feeling that like either it was a higher quality of mushroom or it might have had some different probably same active chemical but different um, secondary chemicals. I don't know what to call it, but yeah, no, it's you do get very thoughtful. So I can see where those mystery schools can exist, and I can also see why there's not that much research on it because it comes very oral
Mhm.
and very visual and not so much written. You do lose a
Right.
little bit like written.
Oh,
I can't hear
oh, I think you.
either of you.
Oh, can you not hear me?
Oh, I can hear you.
I could hear.
Oh, okay.
I can
Sorry.
hear you. Okay. Sorry.
That was weird. Your mic
There's
just
a very
like
weird
went
lag.
real quick.
Oh man, the fungi. The fungi don't want you to hear.
Yeah.
They shut you down.
Right.
Well,
But that.
also,
Oh, Ayla, go ahead, please.
I was just gonna say, like, while you guys have been talking, I just looked up mushroom photography.
Mhm.
And I just think I mean, that they're stunning. Like all the different varieties, the colors, the presentation. There's such a vibrancy to them as well. And I don't know, it's just yeah. I've never really thought about it. I have a friend who he does a lot of hikes and always takes pictures of like the different tree mushrooms that he finds.
Mhm.
And he's got like more of a sciencey background. So I know that like he's probably like more of the like the forest mushroom networks and all that stuff, but just like
Mhm.
reflecting on the spiritual side of it, the vibrancy of them. I mean, like even just to stare at them, it's like, wow, this is like nature and it's really beautiful.
Yeah.
It's just doing its thing, which is
There can be psychedelic.
awe-inspiring.
They have certain mushrooms that hang with, or they're like they have these like chandeliers of mucus that hang
Ew.
to catch like bugs and stuff, and then they eat the bugs. Like,
Wow.
yeah, there's a lot of different mushrooms, and yeah, they're very trippy, and they're kind of alien almost, like in their way that they can so hyper specialize with stuff. It's kind of like deep sea creatures where you see like a fish that has a lantern on the end of its head so it
Yeah.
can catch other tiny fish in the dark,
Not
Right.
a lantern. It's a bioluminescent.
Bioluminescence.
Well, speaking of
That's
bioluminescence,
true.
fungi are capable of bioluminescence as well.
Oh,
And
that's right.
they're so durable that they've been able to they've actually started cultivating a particular strain that's really taking over Chernobyl right now, because through this strain they realize that fungi can eat radiation.
What? Wow.
Yes, they can
Good
eat
on you, fungi
they can
Jesus.
eat ionizing radiation.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
And so
incredible.
they're thinking about using it to line space stations and spacesuits because they can absorb ionizing radiation from space. Which gets
What?
back to the concept that perhaps it did hitch a ride on a comet, because if they can eat radiation, they'd have a meal the entire way.
Well, and do you want to hear something even crazier?
Hmm.
NASA, there was a report years ago where they their clean room, which is where they would store like moon rocks and upcoming soil samples from Mars. They're supposed to be in a clean room where there's like nothing going on, but they found out that it was contaminated with fungus.
Yep.
And that some of the microbes that are ever present and they just can't get rid of could be samples or could spoil samples from Mars and all, and the
Well,
moon and stuff.
that's perfect, because I just read an article that they're talking about the space station has a fungus problem, and they don't know whether it's dangerous or not.
Oh, fun.
Because
Who brought their
because,
athlete's foot
guys,
on the freaking space station?
we did it. It only took fungi 2 billion years, but it managed to get back out in space again. It is now in space again, ready for its next ride out into another planet. And it,
Creepy.
yeah. But they're finding it all over our outer atmosphere. So it's officially made its way into space, and it probably hitched a ride on our rockets.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
so
And it says that the mold survives 200 times the radiation dose of, drum roll, please. Oh, 200 times the radiation dose that would kill a human.
Yeah.
Freaking
Yeah.
resistant.
I was gonna ask what how far out in space they found any sort of fungi, because I'm trying to think of I mean, as humans, whenever we think of hive mind, like bees and stuff, we always think there's a queen, or there's always one ruler.
Queen
but-
fungi.
yeah, like if these came from another planet and they can survive space, you might be able to find a very far distant link of fungi that can transmit information back to a single planet,
Right.
back to a single organism. Then that
Right.
proves the whole hive mind thing. So it's not so much a network acting independently, but rather, yeah, that network with a central controller, a hive mind.
I will up your ante.
Oh, let's do it.
Oh,
I
no,
would-
no.
I would go so far as to saying it's obviously very highly speculative, and there's no way of knowing this, but it is a non-zero possibility that the universe is just a mycelium network, and that the Big Bang was just a spore burst,
I could see that, like a massive.
Hot
a
take
never-
there,
massive
sir.
spore burst. Yeah.
Then every planet allows each. It's like a little checkpoint, allows a relay station for signals to be sent out.
Yep.
Which implies that God is just he's a fungi, right?
It's just a mushroom. Yeah.
That'd be kind of neat. Like you get
I mean,
there,
that's all right, right?
like you get there, and it's just like, oh yeah, we're gonna send you back. Just look at this fucking mushroom over here. That's
Right.
yeah, cool. Yeah.
Right. And shout outs to Star Trek, because Star Trek did popularize the mycelium network, which is what they use to jump the universe, basically modeled after the concept of mycelium sending information across large distances through its network. So
Is
that's
jumping
where
the
I get this
network
idea.
the same as jumping the shark?
Well, I mean, they
Yeah,
did
when
that
Star
a long
Trek
time
jumped the
ago.
shark.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, they did that a long time ago.
The universe.
Yeah, jump the universe. The fungi have made it back into space. I'm assuming that they're gonna hitch a ride to another planet soon, maybe Mars, maybe Mars. But I doubt.
It
I think
sounds
that
like
they
they
can
have
dream
no
bigger.
way of. They could dream bigger, and I doubt
Yeah.
that they'd have any way to prevent them from. They might be on Mars already. If we can't
It
have
could
a
have been on
clean
the
room,
rovers.
yeah. If
Yeah.
we can't have a clean room, then there's that. And it turns out that the space station mold was because people were hanging their sweaty workout clothes on the wall.
Mhm.
So wherever we are, they're gonna be
Yeah,
there
fungi.
too. Yeah,
Yep.
it's totally like
Or
symbiosis.
you've seen those time lapses of somebody putting their hand on a petri dish,
Oh my
and then
God,
all
those
of that stuff growing out of it? That's all
so
fungi.
no, it's no, I know.
Yeah.
I've seen the videos and it's very uncomfortable. As
Yeah.
somebody who just survived one, if not possibly two
Oy.
bouts of food poisoning, the fact that like anything you touch is laden with bacteria and fungi and nastiness and possibly MRSA. I mean, you just never know.
You
The
never
best
know.
relationships are symbiotic relationships. What are you talking about?
That's true. Symbiotic relationships are the best relationships for sure.
So says Venom.
So says
Yeah,
Venom.
right?
Yes. Yeah, let's see what else I got for you guys. So I did want to talk about Ayla. You
Oh,
talked
wait.
about yes. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just are you able to hold that? I can hold
Yeah,
mine.
of course.
Okay, because I just remembered something that you had said earlier about like gut biome and like
Mhm.
the fungi in our guts and stuff. So I'm doing this app. It's the Curable app, which if anybody out there listening deals with chronic pain or long-term injuries, it's a good app in that it's educational and there's a lot of stuff that goes on. But I'm listening to some of the videos and they were talking about the influence that some of the nutrition can have on not just inflammation and chronic pain, but like emotions and like all these different things. And it was really interesting because it's not like a perfect science and everybody's different and, different diets for different situations, obviously. advocating anything. But I did find it interesting that the foods you can eat can influence mood and can influence your experience of pain, which the experience of pain really comes down to a hyperreactivity in the nervous system. And so you think about how, going back to the morality question, the ego question, the free will question, we think we have free will, but then it's like you start unraveling your decision-making processes. And if sometimes you make decisions based on whether you feel good or bad, which is based on whether or not your gut biomes feel good or bad, or it's what you're feeding the one that does this. It does just make you kind of go down a rabbit hole about like choices and the origin of a choice and the influence of a choice and the levels of determinism and free will being balanced or tipped, which gets to be very interesting, especially in a symbiotic relationship, because it's like, who's running the ship here?
Yeah. Oh, and that goes back to Mike's point, right? Humans are just an amalgamation of symbiotic relationships on the biological level. Like we're not just human cells. We're actually more bacteria than anything else.
Well, and what's weird though is that's counter to what we are inclined to think. The I am narrative is so strong and heavy in us, and so then it's like it takes all this
as it is in those tiny little hyphae that are connected to the mycelium network with their own contained nucleuses. They feel so individual with their contained nucleuses.
They're selectively contained nucleus.
Yeah. But I wanted to touch back on what Mike was talking about between these decisions between like the dimorphic, good and evil. And in what pertains to gut biome, like Ayla was talking about, because there is a distinction here that I could, or at least an example I could give, which is the contrast between Candida and shiitake, which is, I forget what shiitakes create, but I forget the compound of shiitake mushrooms, but Candida is a fungus that usually comes from yeast, and a lot of the times you can get Candida growth and it'll give your skin really bad irritations. You'll get rashes, you can get depression, and an overflow of Candida in the gut can basically lead to a whole bunch of health problems. And they have found that eating shiitake mushrooms has a chemical compound that can counteract the overgrowth of Candida and bring it back down to a normal level. So there are sort of mushrooms that can go into conflict with each other because they have
mushroom wars.
A mushroom war, basically. Yeah, a fungi war.
Sword fights.
Yes, sword fights. So it is recommended that if you drink a lot of beer or wine, try to eat shiitake mushrooms as well, because it'll balance out the overgrowth of Candida from the yeast.
Or start drinking vodka.
Or drink vodka, which is that's fine too. Those come from potatoes. It's all good.
Or if you're American, drink gin. Actually,
gin. Yep, juniper.
There's no yeast, right?
All good. Yep.
Wait, where does gin come from?
Juniper berries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They can come from different berries, but juniper is the main one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, how pleasant! That just sounds so pleasant.
That's all. Don't make that.
No, don't do that. Yeah. But I would be remiss if we didn't get into the zombie fungi that everybody knows and loves.
Yes, zombie fungi. We need a whole series of shirts.
Yeah. I do want to stop 1 second to talk
sure.
about, Ayla brought up this notion of pain and long-term pain. So from my understanding, in sort of like personal experiments, the pain tends to do a lot better in like acidic environments. So like it's a long chain of receptors, right? Like you pinch your leg, it's a bunch of nerve endings connecting to each other, and it has to excite all the nerves going all the way up to your brain has to feel it. What's interesting is that depending on what you eat and what you drink, and even something like cold showers, you can make your system more alkaline by nature. And more alkaline systems tend to feel less pain or have like a dull pain response.
Tends to have less ailment as well. not 100%, but a more acidic system. Again, just perfect example is yeast. Yeast loves acidity. And so, detrimental funguses can love acidic environments for sure.
Yeah, and then I wonder if the acidic environment in general tends to more like parasitic or like negative behavior from the fungi level all the way up to the collective human level.
Yeah, of course. Then you get into this idea of, like a urban decay, or, like when communities fall apart and they sort of drop into that acidic nature where they start to erode. Yeah, for sure.
So don't drink beer. Leave it for me to drink.
Yeah.
Remember those
just eat
mycotoxins.
shiitake mushrooms. You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
But I want to be mycotoxins.
Yeah, you can be mycotoxins. That's fine too. But yes, again, we should get to the zombie fungus, which is Ophiocordyceps unilaterus. Which is a species. It's kind of like a family of mushrooms, really. Ophiocordyceps versus cordyceps. Cordyceps mushrooms are the ones that we sort of take for protein growth, which are really good at doing that. They're really good about growing muscles. Ophiocordyceps are the specifically the brain sort of inhabiting fungus, and a lot of people are probably familiar with this if you've seen nature documentaries. Particularly leafcutter ants in the Amazon fall prey to Ophiocordyceps or cordyceps quite often. And this is when you'll see the spores of these cordyceps go into the air and might land on an ant. And if they land on the ant, they'll use those hyphae and that 1200 psi bite to enter into the exoskeleton and worm its way into the brain. Well, not the brain, but the chemical receptors of the ant, which hijacks the ant to go up to a high place and then die in order for the fruiting body to come out of the dead ant, spore, and repeat the whole cycle all over again.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Oh, would you say the word, instead of the word bite, would you say it penetrates the ant?
Yes, it does. It definitely penetrates the ant. Yes, absolutely.
Here we go.
It does.
Here we go.
Welcome to the fun train.
Yeah. Nature's penises, man. That's what they are.
But what's intriguing is that, like, even in like Mayan or I don't know if it's Aztec culture, but the word penetrate obviously has a phallic sort of connotation. But it's very important at a cultural level. And again, if you're right and we're all being driven by fungi, then this sort of notion to penetrate will be a strong one. And you can even think about that, how we, in rhetoric, in politics, and the way we run our societies, the way that we choose our friends, the way that we choose to interact, we're always trying to penetrate somebody's mind in order to get them to see our side whenever we're trying to convince them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, breaking through, right? Yeah. And then connecting. We're very much about connecting, right? We want to create that mycelium network. Right? Yeah.
I'm trying to convince our audience of stuff and get them to go up to the high place to tell their friends about that.
Right. Disseminate my mind spores.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's so funny because, like, when Mike was talking about like how it determines your choices and stuff, for some reason in my mind I heard, yeah, we're friends because I ate that bag of chips that one time. Like, it'd be weird to like boil it down that far, but imagine.
Definitely can try. It's just all very the snacks. It takes over everyone.
Yeah. You could be like, oh, hey, do you want to go on a date? And it's like, no, my gut biome's not right this week, but but hit me up next week. I might be more receptive.
Trust me, I've been very placating to people's gut biome. So I only eat vegan. All right, I'll make you vegan food. I don't know. I'm a pescatarian. You want fish? There's some fish.
Fish is good. I want some salmon.
I
this
think
weekend.
what's most troubling about the zombie fungus, and not just the fact that it can hijack a living organism, but what they found was, and this seems to be true with all fungi, which I will explain in just a moment. When they were doing autopsies of these ants, or just kind of like dissecting them and inspecting them, what they found was that they couldn't tell where the cordyceps ended and the ant began. And that is because fungi is able to replicate cells of its host to the exact degree,
Not
to the
okay.
point where they are unable to differentiate between a fungal cell and the host cell.
Wait, so hold on. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
No, go for it.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out what that means. So because I'm thinking cells, they're looking under a microscope, right? And you can see a picture of this mushroom cell, not shell,
Mhm.
cell, with its specialized little membranes. Then you can see the ant cells. And you're saying that at a certain point, they just start to sort of gradually look the same?
I'm saying what the cordyceps or what the fungi does is replace all of the cells in the ant's body.
Oh, so they can't. Wow.
So it's just all fungal cells.
How is that even possible? Wait. But so does the ant still retain? Does it still look like an ant? Or because I
Yeah.
can't remember.
It just looks like an ant, but when the fruiting body comes out, it comes out of the head of the ant. But the rest of
And
the
then
body
the whole
looks like an
body.
ant. Yeah.
But the whole body has been essentially body snatched.
Absorbed, kind of, yeah.
What?
Body snatched.
That
And that, to piggyback on this, I'll give you guys a great story that I looked. So, talking about trying to take your high to the nth degree, a very wise man decided that he would liquidate some psilocybin cubensis and inject it into his bloodstream, and adopted a fungal blood disease that was uncurable because he
Cool.
started growing fungus in his bloodstream.
That's dope. The scientist says that's fucking amazing. Tell me more. I want to
That
know.
is a commitment.
He died. That's
Oh
what
my
the more
gosh.
is.
And then he
because
was
the-
reborn 3
then
days
he was
later.
reborn as a giant fungus. Yes.
Oh my god! And then all of a
But-
sudden there were a million versions of him walking out.
Yeah, they weren't able
Fungus
to cure
Jesus
him.
is real. I want to believe. I'm gonna get a picture of that man and put him on my wall.
Oh my god! Wait, you said he
well,
died? He died?
Yeah, he
That's not okay.
passed
That's
away
sad.
because they weren't
Okay,
able to
it's not funny.
weren't able to separate the fungal cells again from his actual cells because they do such a good job at mimicking. There's no way to tell until they grow into a fungus in his bloodstream.
It's like
That's
a
all part
different
of the
version.
Hold on, did they bury him or did they cremate him? Because
I don't know. Either way is bad, I think.
Because
Oh, that's true.
look at it like it's the ship of Theseus, right? Like
Right.
if his cells are all the same but in fungal form, and you bury him, you can argue that he's still alive, just in a different form.
Yes, you definitely could. And this comes back to the principle of energy not being destroyed, right? It just gets transferred.
Yeah, you can't create or destroy. Is that the first or second law?
Second law.
Of thermodynamics. I'm trying to. You can't create or destroy matter. Anyways, but no, that's a really intriguing. That's like a hardcore science experiment right there. You're willing to do that for yourself?
Yeah.
That's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein right there too, though. I just watched that movie the other night. Yeah, and it's just about that line of, am I going too far? How great would it be if I could do it? Can I do it? Should I do all those questions when you get on that edge and you get an idea and you just have to know. I mean, the curiosity killed the cat. We have all these little I don't know, tales about that stuff.
9 lives just because.
Not 9 billion mushrooms. It's out of his blood.
In human form. If his blood was sprouting fungi and he got buried, you can still argue that he's alive, just in fungi form.
He's just turned into a fungi.
Yeah, this is where we get into the argument of being a human, right? Like, we think of humans as a one thing, and if you're not in a human form, then you're not alive and you're dead and all that's gone. But that's not when it comes to the collective sense, that may not necessarily be true. So
Well,
he might still be alive, just not in a form that you can recognize or say, "Hey, that's Bob. You see Bob over there?
Is that
That's
ring of mushrooms?
Yeah, that's Robert Paulson over there. That ring of
Yeah.
mushrooms. He's just
watch,
hanging out,
watch. Hey, Bob,
laying all the
precipitate,
spores out."
precipitate.
And that goes back to our conversation about fairies, right? And the fairy rings of the ring of mushrooms.
Interesting.
Yeah. Mhm.
But
We also talk about Christmas, right? Mike's wearing his Christmas hat, which is a representation of the Amanita muscaria
Hold
mushroom,
on.
the red and white.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. You just ignored the jacket.
Oh, and he's got the Santa jacket. Yes,
Come
Santa
on.
being a mushroom peddler from pagan Europe. Yeah,
Hey man, what are you doing after the show? You want to slip out
Yeah.
back up? So
gifts under the pine tree representing Amanita muscaria's favorite place to grow, which is underneath pine trees.
Whoa, I never knew that. That's
Yeah.
creepy.
The whole Christmas thing is there are definitely heavy similarities to the culture around Amanita muscaria mushrooms in Europe back in the Middle Ages.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Just going back to the zombie ant thing
Yeah.
really quickly. The type of mushroom that is?
Ophiocordyceps.
Ophiocordyceps. Now, is that related to or the same as the cordyceps that we are putting in
Same
like our
family,
athletic?
same family, not the same mother. Cordyceps
Okay.
aren't the non sort of parasitic versions of Ophiocordyceps.
Interesting. Okay. I
But
like
if
I
they have
like
a-
the way the terminology breaks down.
But they have a
Mhm.
choice. The taxonomy. If they have a choice, cannot one become the other?
Yeah, at
maybe,
any minute,
maybe all
it
of
could be
these
like,
meatheads eating cordyceps supplements are going to get a rude awakening at some
what do you
point.
think CrossFit gyms are? They're their own like little mycelium
yes.
root systems where everybody gathers and like pours their energy into it and shares
Hey, everybody
fitness
sweats,
resources.
right?
Everybody sweats. There's a lot of foot fungus going on.
They put all that. They hang all that stuff in the same place in the dirty laundry.
Mhm.
If the spores grow.
Ideal conditions.
Yeah.
See, gyms are just a creation of the fungus for a place to recreate. Like seriously,
Hey, think
all of the
about it, like,
conditions.
you have the light that you need to grow, especially now that we have LED lights that can do the same sort of like hydroponic systems. Like you just need a white LED light that can give the same nutrients as the sun. So you have the
Mhm.
plants all covered. You have the hot and moist environments that fungi absolutely love.
Yep.
And then how do you play that up? How do you best do that to spread the fungi? Oh, look, these organisms that we're hosting really do like sex. They
Right,
They
yeah.
love it.
Steam
And
rooms.
the buffest guys and the best fit form women, they tend to want to meet each other. You see, live in
Right.
their own nature. So let's play it up all in the same place.
Or the other place where they drink our single-celled versions of ourselves until they copulate with each other. That would be a bar. Yeah, when they're drinking yeast alcohol.
I think
That would be a bar.
I think the bar is more of like a brothel with the fungi. Like you like you just drink it and like you just want to have that single cell organism penetrate you.
Right. Yeah, we're not actually choosing the beers. The beer is choosing you. It's like,
Yes,
oh yeah,
exactly.
I think I'll go invade that guy. That
You
sounds
wanna
good.
know something sucking hilarious? Use the word sucking because that actually works here. My favorite beers are probiotic beers. They tend to be sours, which tend to be full of bacteria.
Right.
Probably fungi too.
Yeah.
Yes, kombucha fungi?
Yes, it is. The mother is a fungus. Yep. And we want to talk about some of the the beneficial fungi. Obviously, penicillin being one of the greatest saviors of mankind in recent history. The creation of antibiotics could not happen if it weren't for fungi. And what do they grow on? Bread. And what is the Eucharist? Bread. And they like there's a lot of symbolism there. Sure.
Of course. The zombie parasite, though, kind of. Sorry for working backwards, but
That's all
I
right.
do like the notion of the rhetoric form of that, where through programming, maybe it's not called penetration, maybe it's just called programming, where you can turn a completely adult human mind into a parasitic ant, right? That just drives the same ideas heard over and over again. And this kind of plays back to even older philosophical notions. There's a famous quote that humans will live their whole lives to live one original thought, or to have one original thought. And why is that? Maybe there's just a whole lot of programming going on from a bunch of sources. Modern era, you would call them influencers, right? Or podcasters. You can argue that we are trying to be, like I said, like mushrooms trying to spread onto ants, right? Pick up the ideas that we have. So all of that stuff is kind of interesting from a rhetorical and a psychological point of view.
Yeah.
Right. And then you will have these contrasting mushrooms. You will have the competitive mushrooms fighting each other over influence of the ants. Right. Some ants want you to think to clean your room. The other ants want you to not clean your room. I don't know, to do something else. And they fight over the ants themselves, but both are not. But both are still fungi forms fighting over ants. And I find that notion of human thought really intriguing, especially as going back to the collective stuff that we talked about. And there are beneficial ones, right? Like maybe the clean your room ant or clean the room mushroom is penicillin, whereas the other one is mycotoxins, right? And they fight over each other, and they fight over the ones, but they still have the same basic biological need for the spread to propagate. It's like humans, the need to propagate ideas for whoever they can convince.
Yes. And I think propagation is the key term, because if anything, fungi are the masters of propagation. And then they've been able to do it so ubiquitously that they will be with us when we reach for the stars. And they will be elsewhere, likely, So, yes, perhaps this is all just one big coincidence, but perhaps humans really are a sort of
second fiddle.
a second fiddle, a parasite, I would say maybe a symbiotic, but also parasitic relationship. These fungal bodies.
Yeah, fungal seem to be highly adaptive.
Very.
And humans are like, adaptation is our definition, I would argue. Yeah, because then that allows the room to be both the fungal and the ant in the zombie ant sort of thing, which obviously I don't think I have to argue that that's what politicians try to do, right?
Yeah, no.
I don't think I have to make that argument at all.
No.
Whether you're left, right, middle,
Right.
or off the wall in your political ideas, we all try to find a leader. Yeah, no, and then we might be the second fiddle playing of the fungal, and the base trait is adaptation.
Yeah.
With the
And we might just be an extension of their adaptation.
Yeah, and with our exoskeleton being what ideas we allow in and what ideas we do not allow in, because then that can even change our gut biome. Then you have a biological trigger for the ideological mechanism. And you create the perfect feedback loop. Yeah, no, it all makes sense that we're just the extension of fungi.
It's just one big mushroom.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to leave you guys with one more unsettling idea, and that is we're building robots for them now. This is from New Scientist, and they've created a robot that is moved by slime mold's fears. And so slime mold used to be associated more deeply with fungi, but they're not a whole bunch sure if it's still in the same family. But what they think slime molds are is a collection of amoeboids in a sort of like maybe a fungal sheath, but they don't know 100% for sure. But they are deciding to build it robots now. So they've built a sort of arachnid type robot skeleton that you hook slime molds up to. And it, because slime molds have a sort of collective intelligence, just like the fungal bodies do, it can react to light and very loud noises, because those are things that slime molds would react to. So we basically given a slime mold an exosuit.
If it didn't already have one with us.
The blob too.
The blob, yeah, the blob has an exosuit now. It's pretty incredible. It's pretty incredible. You should check it out. It's in Scientific Daily, I believe. That's sort of but yeah,
what you're saying is the AI and the fungi are going to get together and realize they don't need us, and then Mr. Blood Mushroom is going to just proliferate and wipe us all out.
I love that you said that, because there is literally one more article that I really didn't get to read fully, but it's a white paper on how they are modeling supercomputing after mycelium. So
yeah,
of course they are.
Yeah.
Of course they are.
Yeah. So it's already entering the world of AI.
Great.
Yeah, it's always in university. I still am pursuant of like some sort of sentient AI. Classical computing is not possible, but I do think that you can model classical computing over like biological functions like human being, and quantum computing over like your frontal cortex and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the start of that has to be at like cellular level, right? Which would be like the mushrooms you're talking about. And to integrate the two on a hardware level would probably expedite the research like a millionfold. It'd be really, really dope to see.
Maybe it's just maybe all we are the shoemaker elves for the fungi, so they can create their final robot form and take over the universe.
So hey, we've always been
the herald of gods, right?
Yes, we have. Yes, we have.
As human beings.
Yeah, created in God's image,
To create another thing.
Yep.
Pass the message along of creation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think the real question is, what is the fungi's motivation here? What is it that they want? Because that
propagation. I mean, to me, that comes down to it, at its most basic. If you want to get more into the nuances of like what their levels of intelligence are, that's highly speculative, and that needs to be measured. Because I would say that they probably do have ulterior motives, but as far as we can see, as the very base biological level, propagation, and they are experts at it.
Sir, do you know what show you're on?
Yes, I do.
Say exoskeleton, or does that say academic rigorous paper?
Yeah, that's true.
All we do here is
yes, it is true. We do that. But yeah, I mean, I would venture to say that fungi has some sort of I don't know if sentience is the right word, but certainly intelligence. It certainly knows a fair level of about its surroundings, and it seems to be aware of things that we can't even really measure. They are also speculating that the use of mycelium networks could help yield or increase crop yield by 10 times. That if we actually use mycelium to gauge whether plants needed water or not, that we could actually up our product yields in the harvest about 10 times. So,
I would love to see the distribution of altruistic and selfish decisions, because if the AI is modeled off of that mycelium network or modeled off of fungi choices, it might be altruistic in the end.
Maybe.
And if on a hardware level it actually uses fungi inputs to inform at least some part of the equation that you're working with, it could be something beneficial at the end of the day, instead of all Terminator-esque, where it's like, oh, we gotta kill the humans.
Yeah.
It might be like, oh, we have to save the humans because they're like planets.
Because we're going to need them to go into space at some point.
They're idiots, yeah.
We got to get to another planet.
Oh, you're still thinking of like, if they're connected throughout space, though, then they already know they're on other planets.
That's true. But there hasn't been a good meteor in a while, so that there might be a whole new generation of spores ready to make the jump. And they just need a push. We already know, again, like I said, the International Space Station is having a huge fungal problem right now because there's just spores all over space right now.
A fungal opportunity.
A fungal opportunity, yes.
Fungal
maybe it was the Fungus's space station all along, and again, we just had to put it up there for them.
What's really intriguing is that in Halo, so like you meet the Flood, and it's like this infection, this fungal infection that ends up like taking you over, and you become part of a hive mind.
Mm-hmm.
Find out that different planets have different hive minds that control each one. They call them like grave minds, I think.
Hmm.
But then as the story goes on, you find out that the original source of it was these hyper intelligent aliens called the Forerunners. Doesn't matter really what they're called, but they're in charge of the whole universe or they're the most technologically advanced organisms in the universe. And they decided to preserve themselves on cellular levels. And over time that grew into what was called the Flood. So this plays into the notion of intelligence and all of that. And I don't know, maybe there's no ulterior motive. Maybe they're not trying to hop onto a spaceship to get to another planet. Maybe they're altruistic because they already exist everywhere.
Yeah, maybe they live to terraform planets to create life. Maybe that's their drive. Maybe their sole drive is to find a new planet to terraform, to create more life, to create more abundance.
I would like to think selfishness is a Earth-centric idea.
Sure, and fungi are definitely intergalactic, so yes. I like it. Ayla, you got anything else? You good?
Oh, she's
I'm
mad.
not good.
You're not good.
No, I'm good. No, it's just, it's one of those things that, I feel like I'm just gonna take us right back into consciousness and space and time, and there's not enough time for that. But I do think that exploring the free will, determinism, and the different factors that lead into the possible erosion of the concept of free will is interesting, because that also gets into the erosion of the ego, the erosion of motivations that are primarily driven by ego, and it would invite a new way of sort of conceptualizing of oneself.
You do not acknowledge the high fae. What are you doing? The high fae would be very offended with you right now.
I know. I'm just spinning my wheels over here. I'm like, oh man, there's lots of things to think about. Gotta think about all this stuff.
Negative, Ghost Rider. If the fungi are free willed, then by properties of not transparency, not transmutation. Was it if A was B? But there's a certain mathematical property that would imply that if we are like fungi and fungi have free will, then therefore we also have free will.
Yeah. How many times? Yeah. No, I mean, I could see that, but I can also see a situation where that could be proven wrong too. Like, there's so many different ways to look at it, and I gotta sit for a minute. I gotta sit with this.
Controls the fungi if the fungi controls us.
Yeah.
Well,
who fungi's the fungi?
Yeah.
That's the last in our shirt series.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, I would watch a movie called Fungiception.
Yes.
A movie about
a mushroom inside of a mushroom.
Yeah.
All right, guys. You got anything else you wanted to add before we wrap this bad boy up? No? Good.
So who is out of us? Who is the traitor among us? Who's the
fungus among us?
Yeah. Was it me? Was it Ayla? Was it you?
I think the fungus was the friends we made along the way.
Ah, you mean the fungi we made along the way?
Yes, absolutely. All right.
Well, it's fine. Would play
Well,
again.
thank you guys, thank you so much. We appreciate all of you. Thanks to Mike and thanks to Ayla. As always, it's a wonderful conversation to have with you guys, and thank you guys for checking us out tonight. We hope that you're having a wonderful evening. Please consider giving us a thumbs up and a subscription to our YouTube page. It would really help us out a lot, trying to grow that page out. You can also go check out all the other podcasts that our friends and us do on Thinkering Talks on Facebook. And there's a podcast for every day of the week. So go check those out. And they all have their own Facebook pages and YouTube pages. So you can go see those at Thinkering Talks on Facebook. I think that's going to be it for us tonight, guys. Thank you again. We appreciate you. Until next time, Cognonauts, stay out there and we'll catch you on the next Exoplanet. Good night.
Peace.
Bates.